Joining us now is Dr. Sinan Ciddi, Senior Fellow on Turkey at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. So from meeting Trump last week to convincing the EU to drop sanctions, al-Shara seems to have been everywhere recently. And Erdogan is raising his hand here and reminding him of his commitments with Turkey. What is Erdogan saying here, and how important is it for Ankara to send this message right now?
I think it's tremendously important because, look, Erdogan has been pressuring, in fact, lobbying Washington for a considerable amount of time now to say, look, along with some other Gulf states, notably Saudi Arabia, leave Syria to us. And we have seen a lot of commentary in the past several weeks, but mostly since the essentially Trump visit to the region, whereby Turkey's star is allegedly on the rise, saying that Turkey has essentially become the winner out of Trump's visit, because Trump does seem to be in a position to be handing over the so-called keys to Syria to Turkey and Saudi Arabia. And we're seeing some of the fruits of this come out now. We also had a senior Turkish delegation to Washington that was here on Tuesday, just a couple of days ago. And again, as you just correctly reported, we saw that similar petitions being made by the Turkish team saying, look, leave the ISIS prisons to the central administration, to the Shura administration in Syria. Washington does not need to have troops here anymore. Again, Turkey is reiterating this message saying, leave Syria to us and the Saudis will take care of it for you. Essentially, Turkey wants, in collaboration with a couple of other powers in the region, to dominate the fate of Syria going forward.
Now, shortly here, you mentioned the Saudis. We saw large billboards in Damascus thanking Trump and Saudi Arabia's MBS. How much influence does Turkey have at the moment in Syria?
Well, it depends who you talk to. I mean, I think my position is Turkey has some considerable influence in several areas. Look, we just had, since the lifting or the proposed lifting of sanctions, technical details still have to be worked out. We had there was an expo, an exhibition in Damascus where 180 Turkish firms were featured, all ranging from like construction firms to banking firms that are salivating to essentially rebuild and have a significant pie in the rebuilding of Syria. Those are really important. Turkey is also pitching, sales of military equipment and military assistance and hardware to Syria and Syria's new regime. Those are basically really doable by Turkey, and Shura is aware of this. But I'm also hearing that Shura does not want to be under the thumb, under the will of the Erdogan regime and the government in Turkey. It would like to have a more sort of diverse relationship with regional powers, and that's one thing. And one thing that Turkey does not have in abundance, obviously, is capital, money, right? And Shura is aware of this, and so that is why he is keen to essentially build even closer ties with some of the Gulf states, notably the Emiratis as well as the Saudis, simply because they're interested in investing in the new Syrian state. And for them to do so, Shura has got to keep aside, a meaningful distance with the Turkish government, which is why he visited, he was careful to visit Saudi Arabia before, even meeting with Erdogan. And Erdogan joined that meeting essentially first, through Zoom. So he's very careful with his symbolisms and symbology, but he has to sort of, make the best of both worlds between the Turks and the Gulf states.
All right, Sinan Ciddi, thank you very much for your insights. We appreciate it.